The largest meth seizure in Colorado wasn't the win. Killing a calendar was. At 4:20 a.m., FBI, ICE, and HSI raided offices and warehouses across 15 states, and the drugs stopped moving because the approvals did. If that sounds backwards, that's the point. The network didn't crumble when trucks were seized on I-40. It collapsed when its centralized scheduling froze. Drivers stalled, warehouses shut, cash stacks counted. Watch how iron current targeted control, not cargo, and why that single choice turned a resilient system into a silent failure. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The manifest said, household goods. The driver stayed steady, answered in short sentences, hands at 10 and 2. The trailer seal number matched the bill of lading. The I-40 stop looked like a training video for routine. So why did a veteran trooper take an extra lap around the rig and ask for a second look at the load? He followed the checklist. Registration, insurance, logbook hours, VIN plate, DOT inspection stickers. No gaps. The weigh ticket from the last scale matched declared weight, down to the axle spread. Pallets were shrink-wrapped, labels crisp, barcodes scannable. But the route timing didn't fit the origin-destination pair. The truck left late from a warehouse that usually loads at dawn, yet the delivery window was still set for a morning slot 2 states away. That mismatch bought the trooper another 5 minutes. He tapped the sidewall with a rubber mallet. Hollow thuds near the nose, normal resonance at the tail. He asked the driver to break the seal. The rear doors swung open to rows of boxed furniture, evenly strapped. A probe through a carton found foam and particle board. Clean. Then he noticed the spacing between the interior wall and the cargo edge, uniform, and a hair too tight. He checked the front bulkhead bolts. Tool marks showed fresh torque. Behind a false partition, wrapped in plastic film, ran a neat column of bricks, 270 kilograms. All weighed the same, wrapped the same, tucked into a compartment built to survive bumps and thermal scans. That kind of uniformity doesn't happen on a one-off. It points to a preparation site with jigs, scales, and procedures. Think of a forged signature that looks perfect on every page. Real handwriting drifts, pressure changes, strokes wander. Perfection can be its own tell. The truck's audit trail looked flawless the same way. Every sticker fresh, every form error-free, every time stamp lined up. Rehearsal leaves a sheen that real-world hauling rarely keeps intact. Trafficking groups layer contraband inside legitimate freight because cover goods create predictable patterns. They move on trusted lanes, within narrow time windows, using carriers with strong compliance metrics. Dispatchers prefer routes that pass weigh stations at off-peak hours. Manifest mirror real loads bought from brokers. The tactic isn't exotic, it's logistics discipline used for the wrong cargo. A familiar commute hides anomalies because you stop noticing them. The same route, the same fuel stops, the same delivery windows. Those habits become a mask. Only a tiny drift in timing or an overly consistent pack job breaks the spell. Interdiction data shows that most large highway seizures start with something small. A logbook that's too tidy, a driver who never checks mirrors, a cooling unit that hums at the wrong pitch. Here, the uniformly wrapped bricks told analysts the prep didn't happen in a truck stop lot. It came from a centralized build, likely feeding multiple trailers. Once investigators backchecked the carrier's recent dispatches against toll records and warehouse scans, the single truck began to rhyme with others dispatched within the same 4-hour window that week. That perfect rig turned into a blueprint. Clean audits, clean lanes, clean drivers, camouflage that covered millions moving across state lines. The stop didn't end the flow. It handed investigators a thread, and they decided to leave it dangling while they watched who kept pulling it. You seize 270 kilos, and every instinct says slam the brakes. But one arrest and one load only tells you who drove that day, not who ordered the trip tomorrow. The choice was simple and hard at the same time. Let the machine keep running, but put eyes on every gear. Controlled buys, tagged pallets, pole cams outside warehouses, and subpoenas for dispatch software turned a single stop into a live lab. The aim wasn't to stack seizures. It was to learn how the system thinks. There's a risk ledger. Every day you watch, product moves and harm continues. Pull too early, though, and you clip the outer layer. The network sheds that skin and routes around the damage. Cartels practice resilience. New burner numbers, different brokers, a fresh shell carrier by Monday. Investigators weighed that cycle and decided to take the hit up front to avoid years of whack-a-mole. Think cyber forensics. You don't yank the power cord on a compromised server. You watch packet flow, note which ports open at which hours, map the hidden subnets, and wait until you can isolate the controller. Legally, a bigger case needs more than a trunk full of bricks. You need the conspiracy, the hierarchy, the wires that connect them, and the pattern that proves agreement. That's where Ryko-style thinking enters. You build an organizational chart with evidence, not guesses. Who approves dispatch? Who allocates time windows? Which warehouse manager has authority to break a seal after hours? Agents built that chart by logging approvals tied to shipments, linking locations to names, then backing those names with bank flows, phone pings, and shared calendars. A driver's statement lands soft. A synchronized set of records lands hard. Daylight didn't help much because the warehouses ran like any normal facility. Forklifts moved legal pallets, scanners chirped, outbound docks cleared on time. Night was different. The same building shifted roles in quiet moves, team by team, like a relay. One crew staged loads, another installed partitions, a third sealed and logged, all within a tight window that avoided audit flags. Cameras recorded license plates that only appeared after midnight. Telematics showed the same yard exits at the same 20-minute intervals, week after week. Nothing flashy, just repetition so steady it wrote its own signature. Trend analysis pulled the threads tight. Vehicles that never shared a dispatch suddenly aligned on toll crossings within minutes of each other across 2 states. Manifest recycled the same buyer names in rotating order. Timestamps labeled after-hours maintenance recycled at 3 hubs, always within the same 2-hour block. Compliance scores, which usually vary, clustered near perfect for a subset of carriers, the very ones making the graveyard runs. The more the data stacked, the clearer the pulse became. And that pulse gave away the plan. The system's strength, efficiency, made its movement regular, almost musical. Approvals arrived in clusters. Departures rolled in waves, and cross-dock windows hit like a metronome. Once that rhythm was charted, prediction turned simple. Investigators waited 18 months because they weren't chasing cargo. They were mapping control, and control lived in one place: the schedule. What kind of calendar moves narcotics without touching a gram? The kind that assigns windows, not routes. Analysts pulled logs from carrier portals, toll records, and warehouse scans and found something that didn't look like chance. More than 300 vehicles cycled through about 60 drivers, touching nearly 20 warehouses across 11 states. Loads queued inside repeat windows that landed after midnight and closed before dawn. The same doors opened in the same order, week after week. The calendar set the tempo, and the fleet obeyed. On paper, it looked like normal commerce. The trucks ran the same highways every other carrier used. The paperwork passed audits, and inspections showed compliant equipment. The weakness sat in the clock. The windows were too regular to be organic. Real operations drift. Forklifts break. Receivers get backed up. Here, departures snapped to fixed slots. If a truck missed by 10 minutes, the next one would hold so the gap restored itself. That sort of elasticity hints at a central gatekeeper, not a dispatcher improvising on the fly. Think air traffic control. Pilots fly the aircraft, but the tower decides who lines up on the runway, who taxis, and who waits at the hold short. The trucks were pilots in this case, competent, licensed, and replaceable. The approvals played the tower. Green light, and a driver rolled. Yellow, and the trailer sat. Red and the crew found a maintenance note that justified a pause. Efficiency targets quietly shaped everything. Warehouses hit dock turn goals. Carriers chased on-time percentages. Those metrics weren't decorations. They were levers. Centralized approvals used route slots to meter movement across nodes so that risky handoffs happened in the slimmest traffic bands. The calendar assigned Slot A to Warehouse North, Slot B to a cross-dock in another state, and stacked a cushion for a way station slowdown. When the cushion got used, the system consumed it and then snapped back to the baseline slot the next night. Across states, Green light timestamps aligned like a metronome. Midnight plus 12. 1:04. 2:32. Analysts overlaid toll pings and fuel charges on those ticks and watched clusters rise on the same cadence 3, 4, 5 nights running. When one lane pulsed, a sister lane 2 states over pulsed too, staggered by the exact transit delta. That level of coordination isn't a lucky streak. It's a scheduled broadcast to multiple nodes. Research noted synchronized dispatch clusters and recurring after-midnight cross-dock windows as hallmarks of illicit logistics designed to hide in off-peak traffic. Here, the pattern matched. Dispatches bunched, then fell quiet. Cross-dock doors opened after midnight, processed a narrow band of trailers, and shut down before first shift. The regularity helped them blend, but it also gave away their heartbeat. Precision was camouflage, and also a signal you could log, predict, and meet. The reveal was simple and uncomfortable. The people at the top never touched product. They touched timing. They issued approvals, slid windows, and rationed slots that decided which pallets would move under which bill of lading. The schedule wasn't a diary. It was a command channel. Cut the channel and the system pauses itself, because every downstream actor is trained to wait for a timestamp before acting. With the rhythm exposed, the clock became the target, and the strike would need to hit the approvals mid-pulse, not a single truck at the shoulder. Why strike before dawn? Because the calendar said routes would be live, but approvals would still funnel through a handful of desks. Iron Current launched on that edge. Multi-state warrants queued for the same minute. FBI, ICE, and HSI teams split across offices, homes, and control rooms where the green lights originated. The target list wasn't glamorous. Scheduling terminals, phones with authentication tokens, routers in broom closets, and paper binders that tracked maintenance windows no auditor ever saw. The goal was not drugs. It was the switches that told people when to move. Drivers were already rolling. Warehouses had night crews staged. Cross-docks had pallets in lanes waiting for their slot. One early knock and a supervisor could send a single text that scattered loads, wiped drives, or diverted trucks to secondary yards. One late knock, and the cargo would be mid-transfer, with no one to authorize seizures on site. The clock, for once, worked for law enforcement. They had to cut while the routes pulsed, and before the next approval wave cleared. Teams moved like surgeons clamping arteries. They didn't chase the blood cells down the highway. They went for the valves. Entry teams walked past rows of legal freight and went straight to scheduling hubs. A duty manager with a headset became more important than a forklift bay full of boxes. Portable Faraday bags swallowed phones. Laptops were frozen on live dashboards that showed who was waiting at what yard gate. The first clamp meant no new dispatch messages. The second meant no overrides. The third meant the calendar itself went dark. The operational logic is simple. When a network trains every actor to wait for the next timestamp, you cut the signal, while trucks are mid-route. Dependents freeze. Drivers delay for verification. Warehouse leads stop short of breaking a seal without the code that logs the action. By design, nothing improvises. That's the safeguard the cartel trusted, and the hinge agents leaned on. Inside the hubs, pallets came open under warrant. Hidden compartments lost their cover stories. A box of furniture lost its bolt pattern explanation when the paper trail died on screen. No approval, no recorded movement, no plausible scan. On loading docks, supervisors reached for escalation numbers that no longer rang. Across town, a home office printer still warm spat out a route sheet with a 4:20 a.m. release. The copy had no master to match. Paperwork invalidated itself in real time. Cross-state deconfliction kept doors from being kicked. Twice, fusion centers brokered the target stack. Warrant service hit on synchronized hails over encrypted channels. If a team in Oklahoma paused, Arizona held 2 beats to maintain the freeze. Radio stayed light. The point was silence, not headlines. The payoff landed in minutes. At 4:20 a.m., approvals stopped. Trucks idled at gates with hazards on. Warehouses shut dock doors and rolled cages back into staging. Managers counted cash in stacks they suddenly couldn't move, while bank accounts they used for freight advances flagged and locked. No shootouts, just access denied, everywhere the calendar used to speak. The collapse didn't spiral. It was a planned power outage, and everything downstream was wired to wait for the lights to come back. How does a network this large fail without a fight? The hours after Iron Current answered it in quiet scenes. Drivers sat at way stations and truck stops with hazard lights blinking and hands off the keys. Troopers checked credentials and held them pending verification that never came. Dispatch tablets froze on awaiting approval. Yard gates kept trailers in the queue. Red lights steady. Guard shacks logging names with no release codes to match. Warehouses locked dock doors and posted handwritten notes about system outages. On office screens, digital calendars stopped mid-slot. No green lights. No overrides. Just clocks moving and workflow stuck in neutral. You expect a scramble. Burners lighting up, supervisors shouting, maybe a convoy peeling off to a side yard. Instead, receivers watched loading bays sit idle. Phones rang to voicemail. The escalation chain dead-ended at the same two numbers, both dark. Forklifts kept batteries charged, pallets sat wrapped, and night leads told crews to hold until the next timestamp. The only motion was security walking laps and drivers texting, still waiting, to no one who could answer. It looked like a factory that lost its PLC controller. Every machine worked. Sensors blinked. Belts could run if someone pushed start. But the master logic that tells line 1 to feed line 2 was offline, so the safest move was to stand by. That training had been drilled in. Do not break a seal without a code. Do not depart without a slot. Do not accept an unscheduled trailer. The same rules that kept audits clean now handcuffed the field. Business language had wrapped this thing for years. Carriers bragged about compliance scores. Managers used phrases like quality gates, exception handling, and after-hours maintenance. Those terms remove improvisers from the floor. If you empower problem solvers, they cut corners and leave trails. If you build a culture that prizes audit defensibility, the people closest to the work defer upward for every deviation. When the top layer vanished, there was no doctrine for what to do next. Rooms meant for secure dispatch turned into evidence lockers by noon. Door codes held, but warrants opened them. On whiteboards, agents copied approval chains into flowcharts. Names sat on nodes. Arrows showed who could greenlight a late roll or authorize a reseal. Paper binders marked contingency, lacked actual steps. Only phone trees pointing back to the missing gatekeepers. In the yards, GPS pings drew static dots on screens. Nothing moved unless told to. Centralized governance boosts efficiency because it removes variance. One brain allocates time, smooths bottlenecks, and squeezes extra throughput from the same assets. It also creates a single point of failure. Disrupt that brain at the right minute, and every downstream actor hesitates, then stops. No one wants to be the person on the log who made an unauthorized decision. That fear is part design, part survival. The myth says cartels bounce back fast. Redundant routes, backup bosses, endless drivers. What collapsed here was not manpower, but permission. The enterprise didn't resist because it wasn't trained to. It was trained to wait for the next timestamp, and that lesson doesn't end at one bust. It scales to any network that lets a calendar run the show, which is the warning that comes next. Centralized efficiency looked smart until the lights went out. One calendar set the rhythm, and when approvals died, everything stalled on its own. No heroics at the edge, no last-minute reroutes. Just a system built to obey, waiting for orders that never arrived. So press for scrutiny where control hides in plain sight. Demand audits of approval chains, after-hours windows, API tokens, and maintenance codes that open doors without witnesses. Push agencies to share schedule metadata, not only seizure stats. If timing can move millions in narcotics, what else rides on on-time delivery? Ghost payroll, counterfeit pills, synthetic IDs, laundered returns, waiting for the same green light.